Odds are, odds are I'm wrong. I mean about something. I believe a lot of things, and I'm absolutely sure that I'm wrong about a good number of them. I guess not absolutely sure, but the odds are. I was trying to make sense of the world this week, and I was reading Charlie Wartzel in The Atlantic. He was talking about the one thing that united the denizens of the internet this week was a desire for certainty. We just wanted to know exactly who it was and why they'd done it. And in the void of that information not being readily transmissible, story after story after story emerged. This human longing, this need for certainty. Because ambiguity is deeply uncomfortable, isn't it? I know my own need for certainty. I've felt it. I've gotten myself into trouble more times than I'd like to admit, trying to find my own certainty about what somebody else is feeling or thinking, why they're doing what they're doing. I've hurt people that way. And I think that it takes a powerful commitment, a faithful commitment, to hold complexity and ambiguity in the face of all of that need for certainty. But it's not enough to leave it at ambiguity, is it? It's not enough to leave it at complexity. We also have to make choices, have to act, have to do our part to bring this world more into that vision of love and justice that inspires us here to gather together, that calls us daily in our lives. It takes a powerful commitment, a conviction, a faithful conviction to keep humanizing those who refuse to humanize you or those you love. So I've been thinking about the blinders of certainty and the conviction of faith and how you know the difference. How do we know the difference of when we're being led by blinders of certainty versus our convictions of our faith? First, I remember talking about this with a group of teenagers here in this room. I was an intern minister. I was probably 25 years old. These teenagers were sent by their evangelical Christian organization to come to Berkeley, California in their senior year of high school, I think to be inoculated against the bad ideas they were about to encounter when they went off to college. They came with their trustworthy chaperones to Berkeley, California, to engage on the campus of, I don't know, hedonism and hypocrisy and who knows, heresy. And then they came up to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley to be confronted with the strange beliefs of the intern minister. I remember the questions that the chaperones were asking and guiding their children to ask. They were those kind of gotcha questions, looking to, find a hole to show how this whole theology would fall apart under close scrutiny. And I remember articulating to them my clarity, my conviction that there was room for mystery. And the way in which I could see the sparkle in their eyes hearing that, no, that's where we've got them. There's no room for mystery. These kids, they don't want mystery. They want our certainty. It's been a search of our tradition for many years, how to live with conviction without certainty, how to have faith with uncertainty. One of the strands became known as process theology. We were talking about it this week at the first of our class. We're having a theology class this fall. Process theology, which is this way of trying to imagine a God that does not contradict our intellectual sensibilities. And the God of process theology is maybe a God of the verb, not the noun, a becoming, not a being. While Einstein was struggling with the implications of the earliest research into the quantum theory, into the theory of quantum mechanics, when he said, God does not play dice with the universe, his contemporary Alfred North Whitehead was trying to similarly conceive of a God of process. A mathematician and physicist, Whitehead wanted to articulate a vision of God that would hold on to what he cherished about religious traditions while embracing all that was so clear from scientific intellectual discovery. And so his God, he imagined this process God, this unfolding, luring, this pulling humans and all of creation towards God's vision of what could be. And he imagined a list. God would have a list at every moment of everything anyone could possibly do in the next moment to come. And God would have not just that list, but God would rank that list from the very best next possible thing to the worst. And God's job was to lure us towards those best choices while it was our job to try and get there, and we don't mostly. Now, whether or not that's a satisfying idea to you or not, I'm not sure God makes lists, but it's a whole lot better than an algorithm ranking everything and leading us, luring us to the worst possible, the most incendiary, the most extreme, the most rageful and lustful and fearful and reactionary machine designed to exploit human longings in the service of greed, that reduces the infinite fractals of possibility to an efficient marketplace of human attention. John Buren's joined us for this first class, and he referenced, as we were trying to explain what process theology was, the mystical Jewish teacher Rabbi Isaac Luria from the 16th century. He was the one who talked about the idea of tzimtzum, this self-constraining, this self-ensmalling that God would do. The idea was this, that at the beginning, all there was God. It was light to every corner of the universe, and there wasn't room for anything else. And so God shrank God's self in this idea. God shrank God's self in order to allow for more creation to come into being. God shrank oneself in order to give power and agency to other beings, to co-create this unfolding universe with all that would become. When we pay attention to the findings of quantum mechanics, to the unfolding wild randomness of possibility in our own lives, I think we find not just that God plays dice, but God has invited us to a wonderful game of dice, has invited us to consider the odds and possibilities, to listen to our own longings, and to roll along with the divine. Einstein started coming around by the end of his life, in 1945, he wrote in a letter, perhaps it is, that God tirelessly plays dice. Tirelessly plays dice under laws, Einstein said, which he himself prescribed. He wanted some of that certainty still. There's a Buddhist parable about this. One of Buddha's disciples came to him. I'm going to butcher his name, I think. Maelung Yepita. He came to the Buddha and he said, well, I'm not so sure about all of this. This practice, this meditation, this way of life, it seems really hard and rigorous. Before I start, I'd like you to convince me that it's the right thing to do. He said, give me the metaphysics, explain how it all works, make it sensible to me. And Buddha said, it is as if you've been struck with a poison arrow. And here I am offering to remove it for you, teach you how to heal the poison, but you just want to know exactly how deep is this arrow? What is it made out of? How long is the shaft, and from what angle was it shot? Who was it who shot this arrow? What was the bow that they used? Where was it made? How tall was the shooter? What color hair did they have? Who were their family? What beliefs did they subscribe to? You ask me to give you certainty when what you need is practice. The traditions of certainty tell a story in which the end is already foretold. The day of judgment will come, the saved will be separated from the damned, the illusion of this world will finally be revealed, and believers will be given their rewards. The traditions of certainty, be they religious or secular, liberal or conservative, they always have an apocalypse to predict. I know I can go there. But while the odds are that things are going to get a whole lot worse on this planet for our species before they get better, what if the more interesting question is to ask, how would we live if the apocalypse had already happened? The shot's already been fired. The poison arrow is already in your chest. Because for many it has. Peoples, though many of us, even if we have been the recipients of the privilege of belonging to the dominant castes of our country, many of us still know apocalypses that have happened in our own lives or in the lives of our families. Those moments of great collapse. And there are those among us whose people know apocalypse after apocalypse in the history of our country. And so one of my convictions is, in order to survive this moment, we must hear and heed, listen to the wisdom of those who are most marginalized, who have survived the worst brutalities of our country and held on to their humanity. To center the stories and the voices of the marginalized, it's a practice of our faith, a conviction in the face of uncertainty. Because from that wisdom comes a deep humanization. An ability to disagree without dehumanizing. So I looked to one of my professors from Vassar College. He's a best-selling author now, but he was the guy who taught me James Baldwin and Boondocks. His name's Kiese Layman. And he taught me about Baldwin's ability to pierce through the delusions of our society, see with compassion not only the suffering of those on the receiving end of the hatred of racism especially, but the deep alienation within white people at its root, who refused to let his own humanity be diminished by dehumanizing anyone else. So I looked to what Kiese Layman said this week. He said, "I wish that man was not killed." He quoted Kanye West, "Killing's some whack shit." But more than that, I wish that man considered a public and private love for the most vulnerable parts of himself and this nation before he died. I wish the same for all of us. Please, he said, do not offer your good to the gobblers of grace, the great gobblers of grace. They eat suffering. They eat grace. They eat good. They bust us in the heads, gleefully dismantling the few protections the vulnerable have left, but they got heads too. Do not let them take our radical desire for common good. Please. Kiese's thoughts made me think of the story of Megan Phelps Roper. You know who she is? She was the granddaughter of the founder of the Westboro Baptist Church. She grew up in that extreme ideology of certainty. The people who picketed at the funerals of soldiers coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, who spewed the worst hatred against so many in this country, especially the LGBTQ community. She was a loyal foot soldier in their movement. She went on talk shows, was a bright, young, charismatic face of their church, until she found a lifeline to a broader horizon on, of all places, Twitter. What are the odds? And her reflection on it was about non-complimentary behavior. She said, kindness in the face of hostility can have an enormous impact. Those who refused to fight her back, who instead continued to humanize her even as she dehumanized them. That's what changed her life and allowed her to escape from this ideology of certainty. She said the crack is where the grace gets in. She loves this line from The Great Gatsby, reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. Continuing to humanize those who dehumanize you, that's the crack where grace gets in. Do not let them take our radical desire for common good. The odds aren't looking good. Have faith. Soothe the need for certainty. Double down on your convictions and roll the dice once more. Grace loves a long shot. May it be so, and amen.